Well, namaskar. Good morning to all of you logged in for another of our Qualitist interview show. Well, it's not an ordinary one. Today we have a very special qualitist whom we're interviewing. I mean, all the qualitists are special, but for those who've been and following us on the show all this last 1 year, you've been grilled and grilled by my partner in crime, Anshuman Tiwari, and of course, we were together on this. And today it's Anshuman's turn. So, cutting a long story short, just to take you through what this show is all about, the term qualitist, right, it came into being when Dr. Duran, a pioneer in the field of managing for quality. All of us know that the profession exists because of his pioneering work in the field, amongst, of course, the other stalwarts like Walter Schuhart and W. Edwards Deming. But Dr. Duran in 1995 wrote, or rather edited, he's written and edited so many books, but his handbook and, of course, this magnum opus, A History of Managing for Quality, where he invited writers from all over the world to contribute because he wanted to show quality as it developed at different parts of the world. Towards the end of that book, he said that the future of quality, okay, the next century is going to be the century of quality, and this century is the century of productivity. That time when I read that, I thought we were already in the century of quality. And he said that we're going to have a separate kind of a profession for quality. We call these people the qualitists. He proposed that title, and Mr. Suresh Lulla, obviously being one of his most ardent followers and students, decided to go ahead with that title, and we introduced the qualitist title over here in our country in 2019. So ever since we have level 1, 2, and 3, and so once we started giving these the level of qualitist, or the title of qualitist, to the quality professionals, we decided to take this forward and have this show and interview one such qualitist every month. So it's been a year now. Today is our 11th guest. I think there's just 1 month where we did not have a guest on our show. So let me introduce today's co-host, Dr. Parag Vindani, himself a qualitist. Morning, Dr. Parag. You were the first qualitist to be interviewed, and today, after a year, we are going to be interviewing the person whom we always wanted to interview, right? Anshuman Tiwari. So it's going to be a great show, and along with us, all of us, including Anshuman, will agree, because he'll be joining us in a moment, that we over here in India were introduced and taking quality forward. I just mentioned Mr. Suresh Lulla. I often, tease him a little. I said you should be Dr. Suresh Lulla. I mean, I think he should be given an honorary doctorate for the work that he's done here in our country. So, without much
Absolutely.
ado, on Suresh Lulla, sir. No need to introduce him. We all exist because of him and his efforts here. I remember seeing him for the first time, and it was like a dream come true. So, Suresh sir, today we are here to grill and gruel Anshuman. And how do you feel about it? Your protege. I mean, all of us are your proteges, but he's been your official protege, so to say.
Where's Anshuman? I don't see him.
Oh, I will be bringing him on. There he is.
Oh, yes.
I don't like talking behind his back. Well,
So here you are.
good morning to all the participants. Good morning, Balaji. Good morning, Parag. Good morning, Anshuman.
Morning, sir.
It's a pleasure to be on the 11th episode. And I guess Anshuman's been patiently waiting. When will my turn come? I first met Anshuman, or I didn't meet, he met me, or he terrorized me in 1997. I was coming out of the car at the YB Chavan auditorium, and suddenly a guy jumps on the car hood and stops the car. I wondered what I had done. And this guy had handlebar mustache that he kept twirling and insisted that I come for campus interviews to Somaya. I was afraid, so I agreed. And in the group session, my colleagues were with me for this campus interviews. Everyone spoke except this guy. All he did was mustache and threaten me. Who got the job? Anshuman. And we had very happy moments, traveling together, learning together. I must say he's a great learner. He understands quality beyond the traditional ISO, etc. He can think reliability, he can think systems, he can think statistics, he can think people. I noticed that for several years, he focused on competencies of individuals, quality competencies to be effective. And it all culminated in, the ISO 9000 and Six Sigmas and all. He was very logical, left brain. We traveled a lot. He slept a lot. I had to wake him up from his slumber quite often in the classroom. And that was it up to then. He focused on the 20% people who delivered 80% of quality, I think, as a strategy. That 20% in terms of competencies. In more recent years, I've seen he looked at the behavioral side of quality too. And competencies coupled with attitude make the difference. If you have the right attitude and the right competencies, you are a star, quality star in the organization. And he's working on that attitude part. He's also working on grooming the middle management who either have a good attitude or only a good attitude or only competencies. He coaches those who have the competencies. He counsels those who have the right competencies but the wrong attitude. And he coaches those who have the right attitude but lack the competencies. All in all, He's got footprints across the organization. And we both believe that quality is a top down subject. Anshuman is really a good qualitist, and I wish him all the best in the years to come. Thank you. Over to
Over to
you.
you.
Wow. I mean, those last two sentences is something that we dream of listening to right from Suresh sir. I don't know what you're feeling, Anshuman,
I'm done.
but
I
I
can
can see a
retire.
little over the it's in the corner of the eye. I can see a little.
I can now retire.
Anyway, so let's begin with this. I have to first introduce you, Anshuman, and I'm trying to do this in a very concise way because there's so much to be said. But anyway, I'll have to cover. Just tell me if I miss out on something. You're free to just add in. Okay, you can barge and say, hey, just add on. So Anshuman is an industrial engineer from Nagpur University, and he completed his industrial engineering in 1994. Thereafter, he proceeded to obviously do an MBA. And I say obviously because I'm in the teaching profession right now, and I see a lot of engineers, mechanical, industrial, who are, and it's a good sign, they're coming to do an MBA in operations management. And he did this from KJ Somaya Institute in 1998. Thereafter, of course, he went on to join Qimpro, and he spent a good part of 8 years with Wipro before moving to Infosys, thereafter ANZ, HSBC, and then EY, Ernst& Young before now. He's with DXC Technology, and he helps the global team to help DXC deliver on its promises to customers. Anshuman, besides all this, is also a master black belt. He's a change management practitioner. And most recently, he completed a postgraduate diploma in design thinking and innovation. He very politely tells me, I'm not yet done my PhD, which means obviously he's somewhere at the back of his head to do this. Recently, he's been very, very popular on LinkedIn. He helps the early and mid-career professionals manage better. That's the name of his the site that he has on LinkedIn, Manage Better at Work. And he's been declared as a part of the LinkedIn Top Voices of 2022, and in fact part of the LinkedIn India Creator Accelerator program. So wow, we got one hell of a guest on our show. Well, he's not a guest; he's a damn host. But yeah, you can see. I mean, these are just. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot to probe now, and without wasting much time, let me hand it over to Parag to fire away the first question for the day.
So I hope I'm audible. This has become a cliched question, but nonetheless, one has to ask it. Anshuman, welcome to the other end of the spectrum, being interviewed rather than getting on everybody's grueling things and getting nervy. Uh, I want to also sort of step back into history, and I'd probably like to give you a little open space and open time to sort of tell us about two important facets of your career, if I may call it. I would call it the in-Qimpro and the post-Qimpro phase of your quality journey of your life per se, because I know that working with Mr. Lulla, working with Qimpro consultants is it's something that touches you at the very core of your professional life. It changes you as not only as a professional, but it changes you as a human being. So if I were to ask you to sort of highlight maybe one or two key aspects of your life when you were in Qimpro, which I believe is roughly 97, 98 through 2006, and then in the post Qimpro phase, if I were to ask you what changed and what were the things that you were able to work differently, I'd just like to hear about those years, Anshuman, from you. Over to you, Anshuman.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Parag. Firstly, of course, this is a little difficult, may I say, embarrassing as well, because not used to be on this side and not used to be at the receiving end of such accolades. But thank you, sir. First of all, the car story has more twists and turns, which I will possibly narrate at some other time. You only know the last few seconds of the car story. The rest I will share some other time. But Dr. Parag, for your question, and I think I can actually pretty much define my career or describe my career in these two parts. So, what you said, during the, while I was working actively with Qimpro, though I keep saying that uh, we can leave Qimpro, but Qimpro doesn't leave you; it stays with you. So, the key aspects, of course, is that I was very, very keen that I wanted to work with Qimpro and only Qimpro. And when I look back, it was possibly, I didn't know that time, or I didn't understand that time, but it was some kind of an obsession that I was very, uh, I was determined that I will somehow find a way to work there. So, a lot of stories there, but I'll save that for someday. But I finally got, or I was successful in finally landing there. The lessons, many lessons, because for quite some time, like Mr. Luna also said, that I actually traveled with him, and we went to several clients, and I was his assistant for many years, 8 years or so, and also got an opportunity to have my own clients and grow them also. So I would break those that journey. Of course, one key period is the learning part, which never ceases. But initially, you learn a lot more, and if you are open and if your eyes and ears are open, you are learning almost every day, including formatting a letter and making sure that the communication um, is accurate and articulate. Including in those days, printers did not come with very good, I would say, guides, or so, including whether the print is aligned to the edge of the paper. I have even picked up printouts and matched the. But that taught me that quality is not just what is done in the classroom or in the boardroom. It is in every situation. When you are a quality consultant, or any professional, but particularly if you're going to call yourself a quality consultant, then every living moment is actually a test. Everybody is watching you. You may not realize, but you are on test every moment. And the faster you realize this, the better. And he himself, as we all know, is an example of that. Every moment with him is a lesson that you can draw. So that was, I think, lesson number one, that if you are going to call yourself a quality professional or a quality consultant, then please be ready for every moment being an exam. And actually, initially only it feels like an exam, but sooner than later you feel that you become that person. The second was that I saw his devotion for Dr. Duran's work very early, and in a way, I modeled myself on you know if somebody can devote their lessons and learnings and teachings to a person, maybe Mr. Lulav is that person for me. So that, in a sense, became the second lesson. So that also probably explains the journey that even after actively not working with Qimpro, I have tried my best to retain that connection, because it is in only my selfish interest that I have try to retain that connection. Those two would be, I think, primary. Others are, of course, the lessons that you learn as a quality professional. The various um, we we develop a lot of products and services together. IQM being one of my favorite ones, where the international quality maturity model, we developed from literally scratch. The Six Sigma practice that we started, the Baldrige work adapted at the IMC RBNQ, and many such services. So those are, of course, the commonly known ones. So I've chosen not to elaborate on them, but the two which I described, that is one. After moving to Infosys and changing cities as well in 2006, I think that part is more described by um, there are two parts to it, that as well. One is, of course, learning to work in larger organizations and learning from scratch, because for the first 10 years of my career I had worked in very small organization setups. Even before Qimpro, when I had a couple of jobs, they were smaller setups. So the lessons are very different. The second would be learning and realizing that everything happens with a team. Nothing really gets done. As a consultant, sometimes you get that feel that you can get many things done, but as in a corporate, you do realize that the team is important. And more importantly, I started realizing that there are many more aspects of quality management, uh, even as quality management as a subject itself grows. So those would be two key lessons, I think. And lately, in the last 5-7 years, the the impact of technology, I would say, is the most important. So I now work primarily at the intersection of operations and technology, and that is a huge lesson which I had no idea I will be maybe 10 years ago. So that's how I can summarize, Dr. Parag.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. Balaji?
Yeah, wow. I mean, Parag just hit the nail on the head, and of course, we were waiting for these answers. So, the learning that you got at all of your places of work. Now, I'm just taking you through, maybe the not so good times also, because it's during your failures that you actually learn even more. And I think for our much of our audience is people who are in the their 20s and 30s who are going to be getting into this field, and I'm very sure we've all faced failure, Anshuman, and in hindsight, sometimes it turns out to be the greatest learning that we've got, right? So my question to you is about that, whether it's in Qimpro or at Infosys, ANZ, HSBC, or EY, what were those failures? What did you feel at that time, and what did it teach you the most? I mean, was it an epoch making? I'm very sure that these are epoch making events, right? Because they mold. So, what were those failures? Could you share some failures of yours?
Well, this is a very unfair question, but
No,
nothing
because
less,
we all learn, right? When I say
nothing less
failure
is
is somebody comes and says it didn't happen, and then you start thinking, and then you say, wait, this is the biggest learning I've got. So, because people outside will, the children who are now in their 20s, 30s, they will face this. And we got to let them know that it's not a failure, right?
yeah, that I
So,
think
best just to hear it from you.
Mr. Lula shared a lesson very early on about how he started Qimpro and how almost the first 2 years there were no clients. So, and many conversations started and did not lead to a client. And even in the 8 years that I was there, more than eight, I saw many conversations which seemed extremely promising and did not lead anywhere. So the one lesson early on at Qimpro and through Mr. Lula's teachings and his own career were that your success rate can be 1 in 10, but then make it count. You can fail the 9 times, but the 10th that succeeds, make it count. So and of course the realization that these failures will be there. One, the other realization is that the most, I always say this, that the most fundamental human emotion is uh, the desire to blame somebody else, and this is probably coming from my interest in behavioral sciences, that the most fundamental human emotion is not love, fear, and other things. The most fundamental emotion is the desire to blame somebody when particularly things don't go right. And in work situations or even in personal lives, that is most amazing. And that is a lifelong battle that you have with yourself, how not to blame somebody else but to find what you can get better at. So the one incident that has not left me is probably early 2002 or 3. I think I was in charge of one convention, and this was the previous version of Qualtech events that and we had a 2 month typical run. The registrations were very poor that year, and though speakers were there, but the registration did not pick up. And one day before the event, or maybe 2 days before the event, we had to take the very difficult decision of canceling the event. And this is, and Mr. Lullah, without your permission, I'm sharing all this, but this has been a great lesson for me as well. That, and I was in charge. It was probably my first um, mega show as in charge. So that was a very difficult decision, but a right one. And he had left it to me, and that's probably why I took the decision very late, very close to the actual event. Maybe had he been in charge, he would have taken that decision earlier. But he took that risk and allowed me to make that choice very close to the event, knowing fully well that it is a reputational risk for Qimpro as well. And that's a lesson I have learned, that when you allow people to be in charge, then you really allow them to be in charge. So then you don't start meddling away every day. It was a costly mistake, or I won't call it a mistake, but a costly lesson for all of us to learn. We lost some money as well. The hotel booking had to be cancelled. I had to go and stand at the hotel at the day of the convention, because in those days, without WhatsApp and other this thing, you had no way of informing. And one team from Udaipur, I remember, they had already left Udaipur to come to the convention, so they were all set, and the convention was cancelled. So there were about 10-12 such people who had to be told, and that remains the single most biggest lesson for me in terms of failure as well as a lesson. And many lessons were learned that may, in these situations, an action could have been taken earlier, again by me. And secondly, the more humble the lesson also is that he did ask me to go and be present at the hotel and meet each person who had registered personally and convey this. Initially, I felt very awkward, but then I realized why it was important, because I was in charge and I had to take that responsibility. And that is a lesson I have carried since then, that when you're in charge, you are in charge. Then you don't look for other people to blame. So that remains the single most, there are many others, but I think this one stays top of the mind. Post in the last few years, there have been many others where I have failed in gathering support of senior leadership, but I have not really taken that too much to my heart, But this one has stayed with me in many ways. And if you have a long career, there will be many. So, but I'll choose this one to share.
Wow. Yeah. And incidentally, Anshuman, I mean, unknown to you, but a year later, I met you after this.
No, I remember
It
that.
was 2004, if you remember, which was that hotel for the Dr. Duran centenary celebration. Yeah. I remember this.
Somewhere, Balaji, I really feel like a kid, because I started my quality journey in 2004, and healthcare is really really catching up with all the other domains of industry. So I guess we still have a long way to go. So I mean, on that point, Anshuman, I'd probably like to ask you this question. I go back to Mr. Lulla's words. He spoke about you being able to work with competencies, being able to identify the right attributes, to look at attitudes in people. And you're always able to ensure that people are able to change and conform to the approach of quality that is required in the given scenario for the given project, and so on and so forth, irrespective of domains. So my question to you is kind of twofold. Sorry for the long question. One, what do you think are the quality attributes, competencies, and most importantly, I guess, attitudes that a quality professional requires? And the second part of the question is, given the fact that you've been in this for over 2 decades now, and given the influence of the internet today, and a lot of computerization and computer tools today, I don't think it was that prevalent when you started way back in '98. what has changed in quality management over these last 2 decades in terms of attributes, attitudes, and competencies?
Yeah, so I think I'll have to think a little bit, but top of the mind would be, of course, the attributes, or you can say the attitude and temperament and the competencies. If I mix all of that today, of course, there is a difference between all of them, but for brevity, if I mix all of that, one is, of course, a very open mind. So in quality, and actually in every subject, but particularly so in quality, you might be wrong. And if you are working on a project, you might be wrong. So the ability to hold back and not jump to conclusions, particularly in improvement projects, is of immense value. I always look for people who are not jumping to conclusions and they think they know the answer, because very often that answer may not be right. Even if it is right, the fact that you pronounce that solution very early in the project will actually shut others up. So even if you were right, you are actually losing teammates in the process. So that attribute is extremely important, and I always look for that. Even now, when I am looking for teammates or people to lead projects in a corporate sense. The second is related, but ability to learn new stuff. There are quite a few people I still meet who want to live in the 1980s and 90s. I understand the fundamentals don't change, but the applications do change. So that ability to learn something new and making sure that you are able to apply, these are um, these would be two extremely important ones. Then, of course, the general professional values of integrity, humility, and all those apply to every profession. I think quality is no different. But in these two ways, quality is probably a little different to other professions. In many professions, maybe not much changes in 25 years. Which brings me to your second question: what has changed? Uh, so what has not changed are the fundamentals, that teamwork, problem solving, use of quality tools. These things have not changed, and I hope they don't change. What has changed primarily is the speed of or the expectation of very high speed results, and to technology. So technology has made sure that many traditional jobs are no longer there, and in the way that they were initially there. And two, in many situations, technology ensure that your for example, the audit trail and other such mechanisms for a project are much more easier. Earlier, today we can, for a service industry process, we can do a process mining approach and make sure that we have all the data that is required. 20 years ago, 15 years ago, it was a project to collect all this data and make sure that we had the data. So in more tactical terms, that's what has changed. But in conceptual terms, I don't think that much has changed.
So I think that's very brilliantly put, Anshuman, because essentially what you're telling us is that while earlier the chore of collecting the data to come to the problem question itself was a challenge, today at least all of that has become easier. Thank you so much. I think qualitists, young qualitists who are listening in would definitely, uh, help this out. This would help them out.
I,
Yes,
I
Balaji, you had
maybe
yes, Anshuman.
maybe Dr. Prag, I'll add a little bit to that. Along with this, also, since you mentioned young professionals, along with this, it is important to understand that while we may have a calculator with us, we must always know how to do the maths. So that is extremely important for today's quality professionals. Is that even if you have the statistical software or other stuff, if you don't know what the tool is doing, you are actually worse off than the person who doesn't have the tool, because now the tool is dangerous in your hands, because you don't actually know what it is doing. So that I would always recommend, and I always, when I conduct training programs, even now, I make sure that the concept is explained first and then the tool. So yeah, so that's something I thought I'll add.
Brilliant, brilliant. Yes, Balaji.
Yeah, so I think we're halfway through the show, and I was just thinking, do we have any questions that are coming in from the live audience on LinkedIn?
Yes,
Or,
yes. Yeah,
we
there's a
do?
very
Okay.
interesting question. Yeah, so if you, I'll just jump my queue and just step in here. There's a very smart question coming
No, you're not
from.
jumping the queue. I asked you.
So, Mr. Johnny K. Joseph, who is a C-suite facilitator and a coach, actually, not the facilitator, wrong words, has a very lovely question. Can you share your thoughts on how quality in how do you get quality into executive life coaching?
So Johnny is an executive coach, and this is a tough one to apply. But all quality, I would say implementations can be seen as, and Juran call it the triple role, or that you are the supplier, you are the processor, and you are the customer as well. So if we there are some tactical processes of a coaching, uh, I would say, program, where you need to make sure that you do the first few parts correctly, you do the process correctly. So one level is tactical, where you make sure that you do the basics right, you do the logistics right, and that is sometimes indication to your coachee that this person is serious. Johnny, I'm assuming you asked this question as a coach. The second would be a little more operational, where you ensure that the interview and the discussion or the conversation covers all aspects. Third would be a little strategic, where you actually are thinking about the betterment of the coachee. So I would break it down into these three levels, like I do break down every problem. And this is also a lesson from Mr. Lula from his famous Kargil story, where he describes the difference between tactics, operations, and strategy. But I'm trying to apply it quickly to Johnny's question. The easiest one, of course, is the tactical one, to make sure that all the basics are done right, so that the the logistics are in place. Many times, we don't get an opportunity to perform because some basics failed, and then your operational and strategy will actually not have the opportunity to play out, because you failed at something very, very basic. So yeah, so that's something I can add.
Any other question, Parag?
Nope, Balaji. I think you have one of those difficult questions. I can see the look on your face that here it comes.
No, I was actually going to take an extension of what you asked about the tools, etc. And Anshuman, you said that the tools will remain the same. What do you see the future of quality as a science and a profession? I mean, you said that these are the tools would remain the same. But as a profession, what would you want besides, of course, we are trying our best to create the qualitist movement, and it is spreading. Is there anything else that you think, because I think Dr. Churan had once mentioned that unless and until quality is given the same importance as finance, you have a chartered accountant thing in a way. So something like, what do you think needs to be done?
So I mean, I don't see myself in a position where I can influence the outcome. I can certainly ensure that the process is followed. We all can, right? So the qualitist being in the board or next to the financial person is an outcome that may happen, may not happen. I'm more interested in the journey, because that journey will make all our careers and lives worthwhile. So that's how I approach it. I've often said that the quality profession is being failed by the quality professionals themselves. So that certainly needs to change. Many professionals I meet in the quality profession have taken it very lightly. They don't see their profession as a noble one, as a responsibility. I have always lived the profession thinking that we are a watchdog to the organization first, and then making sure that we add layers to the watchdog first. So if there are quality professionals who are failing in the first duty of quality, which is being the watchdog, if we can't raise the alarm, if we can't make sure that the organization listens to poor quality situations and acts, or allows us to act, then the other layers will not happen. So it is futile to believe that we will be able to make a strategic change when we can't stop a shipment for poor quality. I'm just using a manufacturing example. This can be applied in any profession, and Dr. Parag runs hospital. So if the nursing staff is not able to follow the protocols required for sanitizing the room and making sure that the equipment is ready, then to expect that the surgeon will always follow the protocol and everything is a little futile. May follow, may not follow, but the environment for quality is not being set up. So the environment for quality is always set up by the small things, in my view. And the small things matter, particularly in quality. The big things follow. The future of quality, I see definitely a role for us in green quality, if and a role for all of us in green quality, but particularly the quality professionals, because we will do well if the profession pivoted to a little green quality and encouraged all organizations to follow more sustainable practices and the likes. So, two key points to answer your question, Balaji, quickly. One is arrest the decline of the quality of quality professionals, and this program series is in a way an example of what we are trying to do to make sure that the that people in at large, involved in the quality professional realize that they have a responsibility beyond a career and job. There is a larger responsibility if you are willing to call yourself a qualitist, and and be a role model for other younger quality professionals so that they also take this profession with the seriousness it deserves. And the second, of course, is the focus on green quality. So I would summarize it with these 2 points, Balaji.
Wow, yeah, green quality. I think Mr. Suresh Lula keeps hammering this into our head, right? Our ultimate customer is Mother Nature. And if we're not doing anything to please her, we might as well shut shop and go home because we won't survive. We won't survive.
Yeah.
I think these last 2 years, nature has taught us that she can do anything. And we can't control that. You can't predict, you can't do anything. And when she really acts, she really acts. Right, Dr. Parag.
Yeah, so we keep talking about the triple bottom line and about people, planet, profit, but unfortunately, most industry domains don't really look aggressively at the green element in the nature of work. I just want to go back and go to a little larger canvas, if I may, Anshuman, with your permission.
Sure.
India is known to be a country of extremes in terms of both services, products, manufacturing, whatever you look at. You've got the chalta hai attitude, smaller, then there are people who are very focused on the quality of their output. And I will just go back to Minister Jaishankar's comment about a week back, where he spoke about that we don't have to either be pro-China or pro-USA. We might just turn out to be the actual third global or the second global axis in terms of a polarized world, politically polarized world. Now we also have Prime Minister's slogan of "Make in India," and I just wanted to understand your views, or what do you think India should be stationing itself in terms of quality or the quality movement, so that we're able to support this quality movement and actually become a world leader or a world number two in terms of quality output, in terms of products and services, whether it's healthcare, education, manufacturing, any domain that we might look at. What are your views on that?
Yeah, so I think I recently spoke about this as well, that Make in India will be successful only when the product quality is world class. Nobody is going to accept, just because India is trying to come up in the manufacturing ladder, we will be tolerant because you can supply us anything and we will be okay. So that, I think, many people, when I speak to, in particular in conferences and all, seem to have that approach. Oh, we are trying to come up, please support us. Nobody will support you for poor quality. So that expectation of sympathy or is childish, and I mean, even children don't do that. So that has to go away. Systemically, that has to go away. That please do not expect anyone else to be charitable for our efforts of coming up in the manufacturing. So that has to stop as a system. And secondly, coming now to quality specifics, So programs, simple programs like zero defects and all are still extremely useful. The Quality Council of India has over the last few years instituted a zero defect Z program. Many improvements can be made, but it is still a very, very robust program at a lower MSME levels, SMSE, small and medium scale level. So that I would, instead of creating a new program, I would rather encourage everybody to adopt that program. One of the fallacies across the consulting, management consulting world is that everybody wants their own framework. That may not be required. The framework is decent enough, and of course, every framework can improve. But I think that Z framework that the government um has brought in is actually working at very small levels, but deployment is not good enough. So I've seen the program. I've worked with a few people who work on the program, and I would love to encourage that. So that would be my second one. The third one would be more strategic or more large organization level, where can we make sure that quality professionals actually, or there is an interchange between various corporate functions and quality. So I would love to someday see a marketing head becoming a quality head, and vice versa. Or then there would be a real churn in talent, and maybe we will learn from each other. Because otherwise what happens is that if a quality professional or quality head of department remains the head of department for like 10 years, complacency is bound to set in. So we won't see the same actions. Whereas somebody else from another function comes in, may bring in a fresh perspective. So these are two, three things that I can share on a quickly. I mean, without any preparation, since you didn't allow me any. So, but at top of the mind, I would say.
Okay, I think, but you've rounded it off pretty well. Balaji, over to you.
Yeah, so now we're coming towards the last 10 minutes. Anshuman, oh, there's a question before I ask you that. What do you say? This is from Mr. Devraj.
Yeah, so Devraj,
says, yeah.
Devraj has a very deep question about, and Devraj himself is a qualitist, featured qualitist in this. So thank you, first of all, Devraj, for attending and asking this question. I won't see so many as pitfalls. I would rather invert the question and say, what impact can we make to make sure that we become CEOs? So if we continue to look at avoiding pitfalls, we will only be looking for potholes and puddles. So we have to look for more opportunities to make an impact. And I would certainly, and I have tried to do it in my limited way in the companies that I have worked for. That and I'm limiting this question to a corporate setup because that's where you have asked. That can we impact sales? If in an organization you can impact bringing in a customer and make that process simpler, make that customer intake conversion higher. In one project, I remember we converted the pickup rate for consumer cards. I'll not get into details, but the pickup rate is basically the bank has approved the loan and the customer picks up. So if 10 loans were approved and 5 customers picked up in that 2-day period, it is 50%, right? So our pickup rate was less than 20%, which means customers had asked for loans, we approved it, but the customer did not pick up. Now imagine the loss, right? So there is huge loss, huge sales opportunity. The customer was there. The customer has already asked for a loan, so the interest is already there, and then we don't deliver it. And through a quality improvement project, we were able to reduce or improve the pickup rate from mid 20s to high 40s. You will not believe the head of retail, global head of retail for the bank, personally called us up, attended the project meeting because he said that this is the kind of project that makes us tick. Overnight, within 2 weeks, sales were up. All these were already potential sales, right? Because the customer is already there. So if we can do work in that space, the companies will listen. And if we keep doing work with some, here and there, 5% improvement in delivery and this kind of stuff, that is not going to get us to the CEO position. So I would limit my answer, Devraj, to this simple one, that the we have to make an impact at where the company benefits, which is sales. So that would be my answer.
All right. We have one more question from the audience. There are quite a few, but we're just listing
Sure.
out the one. I think you can look at. We have Mr. Ashok Kumar Kurup's question, and Mr. Lulla, probably we'll have to get you also engaged. Mr. Lulla has a style of teaching which ensures that you remember the lessons. This I will also vouch for. I think all of us in the Qualitist group will vouch for. So Anshuman, there's a question up for you. Can you please enumerate a few elements of his teaching style that you imbibe?
With he himself in the call, it is it is difficult, but I will try, Ashok, for old time's sake. Ashok is a good friend, but firstly, the softness of the voice and the tonality, in the sense that in a loud room, it is the softest voice that is heard. So he has always maintained that. I've been personally in rooms where there was a lot of commotion and chaos, and even if he didn't have a mic, people will instantly go down in their volume the moment he chose to speak. So I don't know whether it was deliberate strategy, natural gift, parental genealogy, or whatever it is, it works, right? So in situation, I am not blessed with a soft voice. In fact, I keep getting told that I have too harsh and loud voice. But whenever confronted with a situation where I am not being heard, I actually soften my tone, and that lesson I can certainly attribute to Mr. Lulla's teachings, that you go quieter, softer, yet quieter, softer, you will be heard better. So that is one. Second is storytelling, and storytelling in a crisp and I would say uh, crisp and very articulate manner, that you don't use too many words, yet you convey the story. You don't tell the about the surroundings, but you comes directly to the point and explain the characterization. I've been in many situations where when he's narrating a story, we can imagine the situation that, oh, this person was standing here and this person was standing there, and so on. So that, I would say, is the second attribute. The third is leaving with a lesson. So don't finish the story without that one lesson, and don't overdo it. Right? Just leave it there. So these three teaching lessons, of course, the knowledge and the grasp on knowledge, the tools, the method, the all that we all know, right? Having worked with him very closely, these are the three things I learned deeply: that the voice level, the storytelling ability in a crisp manner, literally creating this situation, and thirdly, leave with a lesson, but just leave. Don't overdo it. So my apologies, sir, if I mis misinterpreted, but this is what I learned, so I have every right to say what I learned, right? So that's where.
Yeah, coming to the stories, just to tell the audience that the fourth in the series of the Quality Fables has just been released, and it's mind bending. And though Mr. Suresh Rulla says it's the last, I don't want it to be the last. I didn't want to announce. Oh, there it is. Yeah, there it is. So please, anybody in the audience, please go to the Qimpro.com website and you could order for it. It's worth its weight in gold. And this is the fourth of it. When he says last, but I don't want it to be the last. I hope I'm just overemphasizing this, Mr. Dula. I hope you're listening. Anshuman, we're coming to the last question. We just left around 5 minutes, but talking about stories, talking about fables, you yourself are known, ManageBetter.in, so many of stories that you narrate there to bring your point. This does not come unless you've been a part of things, and second, unless you've read yourself. So the parting gift to all our listeners: what have been the books that you would want to recommend, to the beginner, which influenced your thinking when you got into this field? And what are the books you're reading right now?
Oh, I should
You
have.
could also tell us why. I mean,
I should have guessed this question, but
got you.
but I didn't. Okay, so the book that got me into quality is this. It's always by
Oh, come on.
so This is the book that got me into quality, and the culprit is in the
Yeah.
call. So
There he is. Yeah, I know.
we can all,
I
in
know
good
that book.
in
This
good
one, the
management,
one that followed it up.
yeah.
The
So
one that came after this also. The customer
correct. But
is queen.
this is what got me hooked when I realized that by the time I was already into ISO 9000 and all. So this reading this, I realized that, oh, ISO 9000 is just the first step, So it's not the crowning glory as I thought at that time. So this was, of course, 94, 95, that time period. But subsequently, I think the books that left the maximum impact, and Mr. Lula has gifted me so many books that I have a library of books only gifted by him. So, and if I can pretend to be a little well read. Again, the credit goes to him. But I think Stephen Covey's Seven Habits is my all-time favorite in many ways. That it it completely changes how you think. There have been many similar books over the years by other authors and so on, but nothing that left that same impact. Um, so that would be number one. I would put there is one book, very popular book, of course, The Last Lecture by Posh. This is a story of a professor who is dying of cancer, and then he shares a similar book is these days by When Breath Becomes Air. So these are non-quality books as such. Within the quality domain, of course, the most popular one, though, remains my number one is the Quality is Free by Phil Crosby. Easy to read, easy to understand, and we can all make sense of it. As you get a little bit more textbookish, I think Quality Planning and QPA by Juran is the number one any day, right? I rate it higher than the handbook. So these would be my quick, short collections. And from a journey point of view, Made in Japan, the story of Sony is another gem. Of course, off late there have been many books. The one I am reading these days is The Courage to be Disliked, which is about is the behavioral side of how we live, and where it places the philosophy of Alfred Adler, which says that interpersonal or lack of interpersonal relationship is the root of all problems that we face. So, so that those would be my this thing. The usual suspects, of course, are all the quality books and all, but I would rate these 3, 4 as the top of tops.
Okay, just for the audience, the quality planning and analysis, I think the fourth edition was the one which Dr. Frank Greiner took over. So it's retitled as Juran on Quality Planning and Analysis, just Quality Planning and Analysis. And the fifth edition, he passed away after he had done most of the writing. So it's called Juran on Quality Planning and Analysis for Enterprise Quality. For those who are into this, these are the editions I think you should be looking for. Because now I think they've taken it to another, they've retitled it. So if you're looking for that, the fourth and the fifth edition. Right. So
I would like to have.
been an hour. Yeah. Go on.
I'd like to pop in one more question, considering that we have 2 minutes on the hour. Anshuman, I come from a background of healthcare, as you know, and we've tried to get a little bit of quality in our operations and stuff. But I don't know about other domains, but especially in healthcare, we've always had this question: is quality a profit center or a cost center? And if you could give me, some light to take back to my colleagues in healthcare as to why do you think quality is a cost center or a profit center? That would help.
I would put it as a excellence center but leading to, because there will be some cost at times. As long as you don't see it as cost but as investment, it will be nice, and that investment will certainly turn into profit. From If I leave the medical parts out, the actual diagnosis and other parts out, the whole experience of the person needing a medical service or intervention from there, so from the phone call to landing up at I will tell you, I donate blood regularly, and I have this thing with the hospital that I go to. The parking place for the person who is donating, come to donate blood, is the farthest. And after you have donated blood, you have to walk the entire half a kilometer to get to your car, and then the fellow will give you an extra ticket because you obviously took the. So I'm a firm believer that you don't get quality unless you complain. So I actually complained. I said, look, I thought I should at least get a thank you if I'm coming to donate blood. I'm not expecting anything in return. The hospital, to its credit, actually came up. The administrator came up and ensured that my ticket was waived off, and in future also they have done. I think they have, as a policy, that they have now done so for anybody coming to. This is an example of how hospitals can actually welcome
Yes.
the customers or the guests. And going on, so for the post-operative or post-medical care stuff as well, and all of us have had situations where either us or somebody in the family has had to go through that. If you can make that process simpler, that is a lot of joy. So, from my view, see, nobody wants to go back to a hospital, but we can certainly refer other people whom we know. And
True.
if we see a hospital as a business enterprise, profit is a motive. May not be primary motive, but it is a motive, and that only comes when we are able to bring more customers. So I would think at the non-medical processes, if we can simplify and make sure that they are easy on the customer or patient, that would go a long way. Would be my simple answer. And Atul Gawande's checklist manifesto book,
Manifesto.
yeah, would be
Yeah.
a mandatory reading.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Anshuman. Balaji, over to you for closing remarks.
Well, yeah, so that is it. It's been 62 minutes of questions. We decided to try to be as brief as we could, but I think I have no regrets. I think we covered whatever we wanted to. Though it's always never complete, there's so much more Anshuman would have to share. But if you want to listen to him, you want to learn more from him, you have managebetter.in. You can go to his website. He has a podcast going there. And now, of course, with the LinkedIn Accelerator program, he's been doing some special shows for LinkedIn. So you could log in there too. For quality-related literature, consultation, teaching, you can go to qimpro.com. You have the man himself, Mr. Suresh Lulla, right here. Very, very wonderful, competent team that goes along with him, and all his books, especially the Quality Fables. They're a good place to start. We just showed you the fourth part of that, the fourth edition of Quality Fables. So even 1, 2, 3 are equally good to read. They set your mind in a certain direction and put the message across. So that's it for this show, Qualitist 11. Next month, we're going to be meeting with yet another edition of this very program. I think we'll be meeting on July the 9th, if I'm not mistaken, but we shall definitely let you know.
July 9th.
Because sometimes, yeah. So, because this was supposed to be last week, right? So we had a few hiccups going, but nevertheless. And before we close, I'd like to also thank Dr. Parag for filling in. It was originally we had Mr. Suman Sood, but he was traveling, and then we said who would fill in, and there you go. Dr. Parag had to come in.
Very,
So thank you,
very
Parag.
big shoes, Balaji. Very big shoes to fill. First Anshuman, then Suman. I think thank you very much, Mr. Lulla, for the honor.
And of course, we all thank Mr. Suresh Lulla for giving us this platform. And I hope this goes from strength to strength. I think we're also starting something new where we're having a monthly quality meet on Zoom, June 25th. You'll, of course, we'll be told about this. We'll send you out the invites very quickly, very soon. So that's it for this program. We hope you had a great time, a learning time from Anshuman. Like I said, it's never complete. And one of the biggest compliments he got before the show began itself was from Mr. Suresh Lulla, that he's always been a learner. And we all are learners here. We all love to learn, and that's what connects us. So thank you very much, the audience, for sending in your questions. We're quite sure there are many other questions which are there, and we make sure that they're sent to Anshuman separately so he can answer to you personally if the need be. So thank you
Certainly.
very much, everybody.
Thank you.
And we'll definitely meet next month. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Sir. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.